is out. Not sure if this can count. Is he going to bust something new, ladies and gentlemen? Deegan! He ran into 360! Oh my gosh! Brian Deegan has just landed the first 360 on a motorcycle. Will he bring it right out of the gate? Beautiful! Brian Deegan!
Chief meteorologist Ginger Zee is talking about a lot more than the weather these days because she's confronting the demons of her past in her candid new memoir, Natural Disaster. I
This
Cover
includes
Them.
her long battle with depression and even a suicide attempt. The night you took the pills, and what would have happened or what you would have missed in
my
life.
gosh.
I mean, one of them in your belly right now.
In my belly, yeah.
But like all of the things that you got to pull yourself out of, if you could speak to anybody watching this, going through that depression, going through suicidal thoughts, what would you say?
If I could have given myself a little bit of perspective and realized how much life there was to
On
live.
his hands from an unexpected rider, Brian Deegan. Whoa, what an upset of events right here for Deegan.
Deegan was the first ever to do a 360 in the competition. He was the most decorated freestyle motocross rider in the X Games history with 10 medals, 3 golds.
2 years ago, Brian Deegan wanted to win gold. He did it in 02. In 03, he had to pull out due to injury. 04, the big crash. Broken femur, 2 broken wrists.
Well, you guys, he hasn't tried that trick on dirt since he crashed at Winter X Games. Hey, Deegs, what kind of demons did you have to fight off to come here tonight?
And it's hard to explain if you've never been in that situation because it's different. When you have your life flash before your eyes, things change. It gets real. Like it gets real. Doctor leaning over me going, okay, I'm gonna do everything we can. I don't know what's wrong with you. I'm gonna go in and see what's wrong. And I just remember him leaning over me with like the mask and he's like, is there anything you want to tell your family and this, that? And I was like, what?
Whoa.
You know, and I just remember I was like, just tell them I love them. So at this point, it was kind of like funny how when you get to that point, when you get scared, you pray, because it's what's natural, Like I can say that now, but as you see perspective in life, what's really important,
That's the whole thing. When you're young, you don't think like that, and all these people that are doing these crazy things, like when we were young.
At the same time, I came back with such perspective, and that's what makes my stories that are not unique, I don't think, unique, is that I got to see them in parallel with these huge natural disasters. I'd come back and I'd say, I am so grateful for my shoelaces. I also didn't want to lose my life, and I had thought so much about taking my own life. The number of emails I've had in the last 3 days that have said, I just lost my son, daughter, a lot of teens, that surprised me, even though I could have been one of them, and it still surprised me.
Jonghyun, a member of boy band SHINee, died in an apparent suicide,
leaving fans in shock across the globe.
For some, Kim's death is indicative of a wider problem.
Behind the glitz, glamour, and seemingly endless well of positivity and energy lies a darker side of stardom. Many celebrities suffer from depression, and that may have been the cause of the latest passing of a young K-pop superstar.
And the death of Kim Jong-un is being seen as a great loss to the music industry and his fans, but also one that could focus attention on South Korea's high rates of suicide.
Child therapist Cheryl Ziegler says bullying is an epidemic.
And how much joy there is to be had when you don't take it that far. So this is what I would say to them. There's a moment when I'm in Nepal parahawking. It's like paragliding with a vulture eating out of your hand. It's one of the most majestic things I've ever done in my life.
Okay.
Flying off the Himalayas. And I had a real moment of clarity. This is when I was definitely healthier. I was actually dating my husband, and we had just told each other that we loved each other for the first time. And I jumped off that mountain, and I had a pang of like, I didn't want to die. I didn't want to die, I wanted to fly. I wanted to keep flying, I wanted to live. And there's like, it sounds very cliche as I'm like circling with this bird, but I had this epiphany of life. And it sounds silly, but I want people to see that.
2017 ends with a very long list of those accused of sexual misconduct in many different industries, but the fallout will last far longer than the new year.
The opioid epidemic finally became one of the biggest stories of 2017 as the number of people dying reached levels that not even corporate media could ignore.
But there's a big picture story here. 2017, we saw record-breaking disasters all over the country.
This year was really an unprecedented year.
In 2017, Britain was struck by a series of terror attacks, the most deadly to take place on British soil for more than a decade.
A world in pieces, we need to be a world at peace.
Even in a city that is no stranger to death and destruction, the most recent October 14th vehicle bomb that killed over 500 people was on a scale never before seen here.
Sexual misconduct allegations dominating entertainment headlines this year, rocking the world that we watch so closely.
Accusations quickly moved beyond Hollywood and politics and spread to offices across the world.
And this is important too with people today. We were talking about this in the beginning of social media. People feel like they need to put on this front and facade of who they are, and they're putting on a thing that people are just doing their own life anyway. You know, they're not so wrapped up in you. You know, you might entertain them for like 10, 20 seconds, but is there anything that's lasting of that in your life? You have to do inventory in your own life. What does matter in my life? And that's a very important part because it's so easy to get caught up in the reality.
A very large iceberg. Within weeks, others stood accused of...
Galatians, we were talking about this the other day. I taught it where it's like, what a man sows, you're going to reap. What you feed the most is going to be strong in you.
So there was this weird juxtaposition of two people, and I would look in the mirror when I'd get home from work and I'd have all my makeup on, especially here in Chicago, and I had this great job, and I would look in the mirror and I would say, I don't know who that is. I don't feel like that person. I don't think that I'm the bright, shiny person smiling on television. I am deeply despondent, isolated,
living a lie.
Living a total lie, because I'd go home and be a completely different human being.
The other seemed to me to be this sort of ADD society with which this sort of liking and everything else has created this sort of feedback loop that you compared to drugs.
We know for a fact that what all of these systems do, every single one, is it exploits our own natural tendencies in human beings to get and want feedback. Why is anxiety and depression amongst our teenagers higher than they've ever been?
Yes.
In a world where you should have access to everything, what is going on? And I think that if you get too desensitized and you need it over and over and over again, then you become actually detached from the world in which you live.
You become callous, you become crude.
It's very scary, and it's very much a part of real life, and it's like you ask yourself, is this reality? And I mean, it is, yeah. Very surprising and shocking, and I think it's pretty telling where, you know, it shows that it's the epidemic is everywhere.
The average life expectancy for Americans has plummeted for the second year in a row.
In 2017, just in Cuyahoga County alone, we have already surpassed last year's number of overdose.
Children are also falling victim to the crisis.
And now we live with this problem that has just gotten geometrically worse. It's one of the ugliest I've seen in 35 years.
Social media is tearing us up as a society. What do you think?
We have created tools that are ripping apart the social fabric of how society works.
And it's influencing the next generation.
And so I think the question we have to ask ourselves is, how do we live in a world where this is now possible?
Feedback loop that you compared to drugs.
The county is already surpassing last year's numbers of 666 opioid-related deaths.
Treating these more like a homicide than a drug accident.
This monster that we're fighting.
If you feed the beast, that beast will destroy you. If you push back on it, we have a chance to control it and rein it in.
Representing all that is evil in the world. You know what, Cam? Marilyn Manson is even afraid of this kid. The other half of a metal militia, Brian Deegan, busting the mini spikes. Spikes, fun, rebel flags.
So, you know, a few years went by, and then next thing, you know, I'm at Viva La Bam, East Coast, doing a show.
No pressure. He might just decide, hey.
And I just got pressure from the TV crew, which happens all the time, you know, and so in this industry.
X Games. And the one-handed backflip from Deegan. The redemption has been fulfilled.
And I go and I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna do it. So I go and backflip, the wind catches me. I go front in first into the jump. I don't rotate the flip, and the handlebars hit me right in the stomach, blow up my kidney and my spleen. The ambulance finally got there. It was like 45 minutes later, took me to the hospital. And I remember on the way to the hospital, I kept falling asleep or trying not to fall asleep. And I remember just thinking of all this, like picturing my funeral, picturing all the people like talking about it and being told, and I'm like, no way. And like you're like, oh man, what's gonna happen if I don't wake up? Where am I gonna be? It all's going through your head. And I was just remember praying and you know, luckily I had that few minutes there to pray. And so I think there's a reason for that, and I feel like I wish I could have made these moves when I was younger.
But you know what's rad is God's completely restored and he's doing big things with you.
And I'm not saying I'm perfect about that at all, but at the end of the day, think about it.
You better know what you're doing.
And it is not to get off on a whole another tangent, but in the end of the day, you ever take the time to just look around and go, man, what created all this?
Exactly.
And the way I can put it, and I've looked into it, because I'm like, was it God? Was it this Big Bang Theory? What was it? So I looked into it. And I studied some different stuff, and in the end, I just came down to the theory of something can't come from nothing. And so think about it. How did this whole universe come from nothing? It couldn't. Someone had to create it at the end of the day, and we can't wrap our minds around it, and we're not probably supposed to, really, at the end of the day, right? At the end of the day, it's God's creation. And I feel like if you really look around, besides what we have forced into people's mind through, you know, TV and all this stuff, that now look at God's creations if you really want to see it, and tell me that it just came by chance. You know, there's no way. Like, at the end of the day.
There's a scripture that Solomon, wisest guy on earth ever, other than Jesus that walked the earth, it said that God has written eternity in the hearts of man. That always stuck to me. It's like ever since we were young kids, you know, like you have those moments where you're like, there has to be something more to life than just this, the day in and day out stuff. But we get caught up in the world goes fast, we come into our scenes and everything, and what Satan does a lot of times is he blinds our eyes of that reality. But we do have glimpses of like looking up. We have those moments in our life where we get humbled, you know, your accidents. And what you were just saying a little bit ago is dealing with this another surgery again, is like perspective. You say, now, why do these people come out to see me, or do these people really care? And then you start looking at what really matters.
We're watching the clock strike midnight.
A restless generation, we're turning over every stone, hoping to find salvation in a world that's left us cold. Can we get back to the altar, back to the arms of our first love? There's only one way to the Father, and He's calling out to us. To the captive, it looks like
Live at 5, divine intervention, or is there a scientific explanation?
That's what one town is questioning after a Bible was the only thing left following a car fire.
In a world where our hearts are breaking and we're lost in the mess we've made, like a blinding light in the dead of night, it's the gospel that makes a way.
Car where nothing else survived, the Lord's words were still there.
The outside of the Bible had some charge, but the inside was still, unburned. It really is. It kind of makes you think, and it kind of gets, in your heart and makes you think about what's going on at the time.
A Bible found untouched in Bass Chapel at William.
Greater than religion, it's the power of the cross. So can we get...
Anthony says the only thing salvageable from his car was a Bible. Even his fire gear was destroyed.
Like a blinding light in the dead of night, it's the gospel. Oh, to the captive, it looks like freedom. To the orphan, it feels like
or you're skating, or you're surfing, or riding, and you hit your head. I mean, so easy, boom, and it's a done deal. You might not have that time. That's why it's so crucial and so important that you have a relationship with Jesus Christ, and you don't wait, I'm going to give my life to Him later, because you don't know. The Bible says life's like a vapor of smoke. You're here today, gone tomorrow, and sometimes it just takes a second.
Yep,
it's crazy.
It's the gospel that makes a way.